Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Jacqueline. I live in Indiana and I am in Grow Zone 6B. Most people around me are not as excited about the growing season as I am, but I've realized after scrolling on YouTube, a lot of gardeners are just like me. And we get so excited and so hyped up about the gardening season. And I have fallen in love with tomatoes. I had my very first homegrown tomato in my 2019 garden. So today I want to go over my top varieties for this year's garden. There are tons of varieties I really want to try this year. And if you guys are interested, I can do a seed haul unboxing. I have some seeds coming in this week. Probably way too many because my seed collection is enormous. I've been collecting seeds since 2018, so my seed collection is ridiculous. This year I really want to grow more cut flowers, but I'll make that into another video. You can check the description box down below for a breakdown of this video. I'm going to break it up into cherry tomatoes and then slicer tomatoes / beefsteak tomatoes. I want to throw this in real quick, but if you are a tomato connoisseur, I am looking for a really good salty, savory, maybe even a smoky flavored tomato. What is your favorite? Let me know down below. A beefsteak, something really meaty would be preferred, but I'd love to know your suggestions on something that is just really savory and good. So when it comes to cherry tomatoes, for me, they are the star of the garden. I absolutely love cherry tomatoes. There are only a few cherry tomatoes that I actually eat fresh. The reason why I love cherry tomatoes is because I dehydrate them. They are so good. I really feel like the flavors of tomatoes like pop and they shine when you dehydrate them. That is my absolute favorite thing that comes out of the garden each year is dehydrated cherry tomatoes. So the cherry tomatoes that I'm going to list are things that I really like, and I feel like their flavors really shine when they are dehydrated. So here are my favorite cherry tomatoes. The black cherry tomato is one of my favorites to eat fresh. There are very few cherry tomatoes that I really enjoy eating fresh. The black cherry is so good. It has such a deep flavor. It's nice and sweet. It's juicy. There's a decent amount of meat in them. It is hands down one of my favorite, and it really shines when it's dehydrated. Another tomato that I really love, and I will also eat this one fresh, is the Sun Gold. Everybody loves the Sun Gold tomato, and for a good reason. I do find them to crack a lot in the garden, and I find that my Sun Gold cherry tomatoes keep popping up random spots all over my garden, and it has a long will to live. In 2020, I decided to seed start a little earlier for my zone because I wanted to see how the plants would do if I seed started them early. And my Sun Gold, I'll put a picture on the screen, my Sun Gold ended up getting so huge. Its root was so long. I mean, you want to talk about a really strong, sturdy plant. Another cherry tomato that I really love is the yellow pear. It's such a mild tasting tomato. Not a lot of people really love the yellow pear when they're talking about flavor comparison to other cherries, but I tell you what, the yellow pear is so good sun-dried. Last year, I couldn't tell you how much money I spent at the farmer's market supporting local farmers because I was just not producing enough cherry tomatoes, and I was on those yellow pear cherry tomatoes. They sun-dry, they dehydrate really, really well. Another one of my favorites, and it's kind of related to the yellow pear, is the indigo pear drop. So the indigo pear drop looks exactly like the yellow pear tomato, except it has purple shoulders. So wherever the sun touches it, it goes purple. It has that really nice anthocyanin color to it. When you eat it fresh, it's really sour and twangy. But when you dehydrate it, the flavor is so complex. It's deep, it's smoky, it's sweet, it's savory. It has this really complex flavor palette, and I feel like this is one tomato that really, really, really shines when you dehydrate it. The next cherry tomato that I really love is the orange Rossellini. I've heard MIGardener rave about this tomato, especially when you dehydrate it. And when anybody gives recommendations about dehydrated cherry tomatoes, I'm on top of it. So this one will always have a place in my garden because it is top-notch flavor. It really does shine. It has a really, really sweet flavor to it. The next cherry tomato that I really loved, last year was my first time growing it, was the Isis Candy. Isis Candy is so sweet. It is a bit of a bigger cherry tomato, I would say. Last year was my first time growing it, and oh my goodness, I absolutely loved it. It was so good fresh, very sweet, probably one of the sweetest cherries that I've ever tried. One of my all-time favorite cherry tomatoes is the blue goldberries. I've been having a hard time trying to source seeds for that this year, but it's this little yellow golden cherry with those purple shoulders. One thing about me is I love a colored tomato. Yellow and orange tomatoes are my favorite, so are purples. Anything with stripes or purple shoulders, like, I'm all about that. I just find red tomatoes to be so boring. Not that I won't grow them, but I love the variety and I love the conversation and the shock value. I love to share my garden, and it's just such a really good conversation starter for people to see a striped tomato or a purple tomato or one with purple shoulders. It gets me excited about gardening because I don't want to grow things that I can just find in the grocery store. I want to grow things that I can only find in my backyard. And I feel like that's the joy of a backyard gardener. There's just something so special to me about being able to grow something that I can only find in my yard. And that in itself makes gardening very rewarding for me, because if I weren't to grow it in my backyard, I would never get to taste those flavors anywhere else. Because the farmer's market doesn't have it, the grocery store doesn't have it. And so it makes all of this effort and this work that I put into the garden worth it. And then the last cherry on my list is a cousin to the tomato. I think it is the ground cherry. We love ground cherries here. Anytime they're ripe, we're eating them. They're really hard to germinate, but I'm hoping that this year I'll be able to grow enough that I'll be able to save some and freeze some. They get ravaged by the flea beetles. It's almost like a flea beetle trap plant. I'm thinking of planting a few eggplants because flea beetles also like eggplants and we don't eat a lot of eggplants. So I'm thinking of just planting a few eggplants around and hoping the beetles will just ravage the eggplants instead of the ground cherries. There are a few varieties of cherry tomatoes that I want to try this year that I really hope I can make space for. I don't have a huge yard, so even just trying to fit all of these varieties can be a little bit of a hassle. I've heard really good things about the sun peach, like that it's the sweetest cherry out there. I gotta try it. And then also the sun sugar. Really want to try that. I've heard amazing things about it. The black strawberry cherry tomato. I saw Baker Creek added that to their website this year and I bought the seeds and it looks beautiful and it sounds delicious. And then there's a tomato that I've had in my seed stash for a few years now. It's called the orange banana plum. It just looks delicious. I'm a sucker for those yellow and orange tomatoes, so I'm gonna try to make space for that this year. As far as my bigger tomatoes, really anything not cherry tomato sized, the very first one is gonna be a Black Beauty. That is the first homegrown tomato I ever tried from my yard in 2019, and oh my gosh, I fell in love with the Black Beauty, and it has a sentimental value to me, so I will always make space for a Black Beauty. They're not productive. The fruits can sometimes be really big and other times, you know, I've had them be like really small and other times I've had bigger ones. It's not really consistent in size, but it's beautiful in color. It's a great conversation starter. I think it's delicious. Ours really tastes smoky and sweet, and it's really meaty, and it's a little juicy as well. The next tomato that I really love is the Paul Robeson. Now this is a tomato that is smoky and salty in flavor. It's a really beautiful color. It's like red and brown and green. I really like using this one for different sauces. The next tomato on my list is Pink Oxheart. When I grew these bad boys were huge and they're so meaty. There's very little seed. The flavor wasn't amazing, but we used it for different types of salsas and tomato sauces, and it canned really well. I prefer the Pink Oxheart over other canning tomatoes. I grew the Amish paste, but the Amish paste ones were really small and they cracked a lot. I would just rather grow an Oxheart tomato over a paste tomato. Maybe my opinion on that will change as the years come, but I really love the Pink Oxheart as a canning tomato. So we're gonna do a lot of Pink Oxhearts this year for canning purposes. Another one that we're gonna grow is a Jubilee, which is like a yellow tomato. My toddlers, they love the Jubilee tomato. We got some from the farmer's market and they told us that the variety was Jubilee, and my girls go nuts over it. They love to eat it fresh. So I'm growing Jubilee for my toddlers. And then the next tomato on my list that is a must grow is the Cherokee Purple. That is one that my oldest daughter loves, so I will always have space for it in my garden. I actually may keep her as like the caretaker of all the Cherokee Purples in our garden. Now I also want to make space for just a classic red tomato, something that's salty. I've heard good things about the Abe Lincoln and the Mortgage Lifter tomato, so I'm going to try to make space for both of those this year. Those are on my maybe list. Really depends on how much space we have, but I really want to make room for something that is really meaty and just really savory. So if you guys have a recommendation, I would love to know down below. And yeah, those are my must grow tomatoes for 2022. I'm about to seed start now, so I'm gonna be whipping these seeds out and growing them. I grew so many flowers last year and I absolutely fell in love with adding beauty to my garden. Like, I don't want my garden to just be something where I produce food to eat. The garden is also very healing for me. The garden is beautiful to me, and last year adding all those flowers to my garden made me realize I also want my garden to be a beautiful place where I can relax and connect with nature. Take off my shoes and walk on my bare feet and really ground myself and find healing in this place of reflection and nurturing nature and having nature nurture me back. There's just something so beautiful in that relationship that we have with nature. And when you start to garden, I think it's important to create a space like that where you're not just working, sweating, your skin is frying in the sun. Like, it's also nice to have a place where you can relax and you can just let your worries melt away for a minute and listen to the birds and listen to the wind and smell the beautiful flowers and watch the butterflies fly all over your garden. There's something very healing in that process of quieting your mind and just being present inside of nature, inside the garden. And I can't wait to share more of that with you guys. That's a huge part of why I do garden, is that relationship that we create with nature. And it's very beautiful, it's very healing. Thank you guys for being here and following along. What are your favorite tomatoes? Tell me down below. I would love to add more tomatoes to my tomato collection, even if I can't make room for it this year. I love hearing about tomatoes. I've watched every single tomato video on YouTube of people talking about their must-grow tomatoes, their favorite tomatoes, and what they're growing for 2022. If you've made that video, I've watched it already. I can't stop taking in information about cherry tomatoes and people's favorite tomatoes. Alright, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. See ya.